guys! So I am back to read our story, Young Thomas Edison, with you. And as always, if you want to read and follow along with us, you can go ahead and go grab your book. We are on pages 358, 359, and you can choose to just listen or you can read along with us. All right, Young Thomas Edison by Michael Dooling. And our central question is, what important traits must an inventor have? So think about that as we read and talk about Thomas. Thomas Alva Edison was born in a little house in Milan, Ohio on February 11, 1847, to Samuel and Nancy Edison. He was the youngest of 7 children. Thomas, who was called Young Al by his family, lived in an era very different from ours. There was no electric light, no telephone, no radio or CD player, not even a movie theater. There were definitely no laptops, definitely no Nintendo Switches, some of the cool stuff we have today. Thomas loved to experiment. In 1856, at the age of 9, he turned his family's cellar into a laboratory, complete with test tubes, beakers, and whatever chemicals he could buy. It was a mess. Bottles were everywhere. Young Al would mix one chemical after another, sometimes following the experiments in his chemistry book, sometimes not. A little of this and a little of that, he used to mumble. His mother always encouraged him to ask questions, and he did. What is this? Why does that happen? How does it happen? A lot of the things that Thomas used for his experiments probably weren't very safe, and most kids wouldn't be able to use today. A bout of scarlet fever left Al hard of hearing, which made school difficult. While Al asked many questions at home, he didn't ask any at school. Instead, he spent his time there daydreaming about his next experiment. Al's mother, a former teacher, took him out of school after only 3 months. From then on, she taught him at home. Mrs. Edison made sure he received an excellent education. He read Shakespeare, the Bible, history, and much more. Over the next few years, he also studied the great inventors such as Galileo. So the fact that she could just take him out of school and he didn't have to go and he was able to use these crazy poisons and stuff, all of those kind of help point to the fact that this story takes place in the past. Okay, it happened a long time ago in a time very different from ours. At age 12, young Al decided to look for a job. He needed money to continue his experiments, so he went into business as a paperboy in the train that went from Port Huron, where the Edisons now lived, to Detroit, Michigan. Every morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., Al sold newspapers. Then he spent all day at the Detroit Library reading and dreaming about his next experiment. He planned to read every book in the library, starting with the last book on the shelf and working back to the first. At night, he took the train home and sold papers again. So at only 12 years old, he was riding the train into a big city all by himself, and he was working. Do you think that would be allowed to happen today? Probably not. There are actually laws against children that young working. Eventually, with the permission of the conductor, Al set up a laboratory in the baggage car of the train. Soon the young scientist was experimenting with everything: chemicals, gadgets, test tubes, beakers, doohickeys, and thingamajigs. Things were going well until one day when the train made a sudden lurch. Bottles, books, newspapers, candies, and fruits went flying, along with Al. A bottle of phosphorus burst into flames. Al scrambled to put out the flames, but they spread too fast. Soon, a very upset conductor rushed in. At the next stop, the conductor threw all of Al's things off the train. Even him. Uh-oh, he got in big trouble. Al had never been so disappointed in his life. He went home and set up his laboratory again with the encouragement of his mother. He continued to experiment and tinker with every gadget he could get his hands on. Usually his experiments did not work, but he always kept trying. Before long, Al had another job. He was a night wire, a radio telegraph operator in Stratford Junction, Canada. There was a lot to learn. For weeks, he soaked up all the information he could about telegraphy. Al learned that Morse code and much more. He worked the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, often sleeping right at the station. He also set up his laboratory in the back room of the station so that he could experiment in his off hours. Apart from the occasional explosion, life was grand. One of Al's duties as the operator was to send the signal 6 every hour on the hour to show the dispatcher at the next station that he was awake. But the long hours sometimes caught up with him and he would fall asleep, so the scientist in him had an idea. Soon, Al had invented a device that hooked to the telegraphy key by a clock. When the hour struck, the minute hand of the clock sent the message 6 for him. It was a moment of pure genius, which quickly got him fired when his boss discovered that he was sleeping on the job. Yeah, you can't sleep at work. For the next 5 years, young Edison traveled all over the South and Midwest, from one telegraph job to another. He continued to try to find ways to improve the telegraph. At age 21, he made his way to Boston, Massachusetts, and started using his first name, Thomas. He decided that he was going to be an inventor, and he set up his latest laboratory. He wanted to learn all he could about electrical forces. His first patented invention was the electrical vote recorder. Unfortunately, Congress did not like his invention, and he couldn't sell it, which is kind of crazy because we vote through an electric vote recorder now. Over the years, Thomas's hearing had grown worse. By now, he was nearly deaf. This did not hamper his creative abilities, though. In fact, he thought it even helped him to concentrate because he was not distracted by noises. It created solitude where he could turn out the whole world and think. In 1869, Thomas moved to New York City and then later established his laboratory in Newark, New Jersey. And then bad news came from home. His mother had died. Thomas, at 24, was deeply saddened. For a long time, he could not even speak of her. He would miss her letters, her advice, and encouragement. He owed everything to his mother. Because remember, when he was sad and disappointed and ready to quit, his mother kept pushing him. In 1876, Thomas moved his laboratory to Menlo Park, New Jersey. He invented the carbon transmitter, which amplified the human voice, making the telephone and the microphone possible. He also invented a machine that talked, a phonograph. Shortly thereafter, Thomas invented an electric light bulb. He also discovered the principle of sound waves, which made the radio possible. In 1887, he moved his laboratory to West Orange, New Jersey, developing the motion picture and much more. At one point, he had 250 people working for him and 45 inventions going. So that's just a brief overview of some of his inventions. He is most famous for inventing the electric light bulb. So look up. Do you have a light overhead? You should thank Thomas Edison for that. Such strange, incredible inventions were coming out of his laboratory that people started to call Thomas the Wizard. He would live to be 84 years old and patent 1,093 inventions. Thomas would always remember his mother's encouraging words to ask questions. What is this? Why does that happen? How does it happen? So Thomas Edison was famous for his inventions. He is one of the most famous inventors in American history. And even though the light bulb is his biggest invention, he actually had lots to do with tons of things that help make our lives easier even today. So tomorrow you're actually going to get a little bit more information about him in a folder where you can check out and read and watch videos about him.